Belgium has raised concerns over what it called unidentified drone flights near a military base where U.S. nuclear weapons are stored. According to Defense Minister Theo Franken, the flights spotted during the weekend seem to be part of a spying operation. The Belgian defense chief on Monday confirmed that drones had flown into the area near the Kleine Brogel Air Base in northeast Belgium in two phases on Saturday and Sunday night. The first phase involved small drones to test the radio frequencies of Belgian security services. Then later came big drones to destabilize the area and people, Franken told local media. Both NATO and the European Union have been on high alert following a string of airspace violations thought to be from Russia in recent weeks. In September, NATO issued a warning to Moscow saying it would use all means to defend against any further breaches of its airspace after the downing of Russian drones over Poland and Estonia's report of an intrusion by Russian fighter jets.
The body of the Ethiopian Prime Minister Meles Zenawi has left Brussels, where it was due to travel to an Ethiopian Airlines plane to the capital Addis Ababa. The silver hearse, accompanied by a police escort, left the St. Luke University Hospital in Brussels, where sources say he died of a sudden infection. It is still unclear as to the nature of the illness and the treatment he received.
Of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours.
These are otherworldly things that are performing maneuvers that haven't been seen.
There's a whole fleet of them.
I have seen with my own eyes non-human craft and non-human beings.
This is so secret. There have been very few people in our entire government that have been allowed or provided access to it.
Even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis, but that begins to ramp out of control.
It's not acceptable to have secret parts of government that no one ever sees. People have been hurt protecting and hiding this information.
Some people claim it would cost them their lives if they spoke out about these things.
You had information being locked away that could change the trajectory for species.
This is the biggest discovery in human history.
Hidden in the heart of Ethiopia, far from the eyes of the world, there is a chapel surrounded by silence, devotion, and fear. In the ancient city of Axum, this small structure stands not because of its beauty, but because of what it's believed to hold inside: the Ark of the Covenant. The building is small, humble, and worn by time. But to those who believe, it is the most important place on earth. Day and night, the guardian monk stays alone, praying, watching, and protecting what lies inside. The other monks never enter. They never look. They never ask questions. They simply trust. No photos, no visitors, no exceptions. Some say this secrecy is just tradition, but others have a different view. They say it's protection, not to keep people out, but to keep something in. Something too holy, too dangerous, and too powerful for mankind. And the fear is real. Those who've tried to force their way in don't speak of it anymore. This chapel in Axum remains sealed, quiet, untouched. But that silence is about to break, and what's hidden behind those stone walls may change everything. In 2020, something happened that raised more questions than answers. A group of church officials, researchers, and government representatives planned a formal inspection of the chapel in Axum. the same one believed to hold the Ark of the Covenant. For the first time in decades, there was talk of opening the site and seeing what lay inside. But suddenly, everything was stopped. No official reason was given. The local government, which had quietly approved the visit, reversed its position overnight. Access was denied. Guards were placed around the perimeter. The silence returned, stronger than before. People close to the event say something strange happened in the days leading up to the planned inspection. There were reports of unusual lights seen at night around the chapel. Some even claimed to hear deep sounds, like a hum or vibration, coming from within the walls. It was dismissed as rumor, until the visit was canceled. One of the senior church figures involved was later quoted anonymously saying, "We are not prepared for what is inside, not spiritually, not politically, not scientifically." That one sentence spread like fire through underground circles. Researchers, religious scholars, and historians began to speculate. What could possibly be so threatening, so dangerous, that even a government backed away? Some believed the church feared public panic. Others whispered about ancient curses, warnings, or the awakening of something that should remain sealed. But no one could say for certain. Whatever truly happened behind closed doors in 2020 has remained hidden, and those who tried to push for answers found doors closing all around them, both in Ethiopia and beyond. The question that remains is chilling. What did they almost uncover? And why were they so desperate to stop it from being seen? Inside that small chapel in Axum, there is only one man allowed beyond the threshold. He is known simply as the Guardian of the Ark. No one knows his real name. Once he takes the role, he disappears from public life. From that moment on, his only purpose is to watch over what lies inside. He does not leave. He does not speak about what he sees. He does not interact with the outside world. He gives up everything, family, freedom, even identity, for the sake of a divine calling. This guardian monk is chosen through prayer, fasting, and deep spiritual ceremony. Once the former guardian dies, another is selected immediately. It is said that during the handover, only one phrase is spoken. "It is now yours." No explanation, no warnings, just a transfer of silence. Witnesses say that after the new monk enters the chapel, his expression changes. His face becomes pale, his eyes distant, as if he has seen something that cannot be explained, something that changes a man forever. Most who serve as guardians die within a few years, not from violence or illness, but from something else. The locals call it the weight of holiness. Others believe the secret is too great for one heart to carry. There are rumors, of course. Some say the monk speaks to the Ark. Others claim he glows faintly in the dark. But no proof exists, because no one dares go inside to confirm. Only one thing is certain. When the guardian dies, no autopsy is done, no last words are shared. His body is buried quickly, quietly, without questions, and a new monk enters the chapel to carry the burden, alone. What is so sacred or so dangerous that one man must carry it to his grave? Axum is not only a place of faith, it's also a place of bloodshed. In recent years, war and civil unrest have shaken the region. Armed groups fought for power, and chaos reached the very streets where the chapel stands. People fled, buildings were destroyed, but the small chapel remained untouched. Not because it was defended by soldiers, but because everyone feared it. During the conflict in 2020 and 2021, there were disturbing reports. Fighters who approached the site began to fall ill without cause. Some collapsed before even reaching the door. Others fled in panic after hearing what they described as a voice, not human, warning them to leave. One man, a former soldier, later told his story in private. He had been ordered to storm the chapel, but as he got closer, a sharp pain hit his chest and his vision went black. He woke up hours later with no memory of what had happened. He left the army and never returned to that part of the country. Stories like this were not published in major newspapers, but in Axum, everyone knows them. What's more disturbing is what happened after the attacks. When the city fell quiet again, church leaders sealed the chapel tighter than ever. No more public appearances, no more conversations with journalists. It was as if something inside had been disturbed, and now had to be contained again. Why this level of silence? Why this sudden wall of fear? Many believe the conflict didn't just reach the chapel. It awakened something inside. Something ancient. Something powerful. Something that must never be released. The monks refuse to talk. The officials deny everything. But the people of Axum, they whisper in fear. They tried to open it. Now they're trying to keep it from opening again. Another account came from an Ethiopian priest who approached the chapel too closely without permission. He claimed to hear a voice, deep and not human, whispering in a language he could not understand. His health began to decline within days. He refused to speak about it ever again, except to say, "I heard something that was not meant for this world." Even outside of Axum, in other locations tied to the Ark, Qumran, Jerusalem, and hidden caves in Egypt, similar stories have emerged. Lights that have no source, strange sounds like thunder under the ground, and the overwhelming feeling of being watched. Skeptics call it imagination or stress. But those who felt it say the same thing. It wasn't a feeling of evil. It was holy fear. The kind of fear that stops your breath, holds your heart, and makes you realize you're standing in the presence of something not human. For centuries, people believed the Ark of the Covenant was purely spiritual, a symbol of God's presence, a vessel of divine power, sacred beyond understanding. But in recent decades, a new idea has emerged among some scholars and scientists, one that raises even deeper questions. What if the Ark wasn't just holy, but technological? This theory may sound outrageous, even offensive to some, but those who have studied the descriptions in the Bible see something strange. The Ark was made of wood, yes, but overlaid entirely with pure gold. Inside, it held objects that symbolized covenant and power. But it wasn't just a container. It glowed. It made sounds. It caused death to the unworthy. It could not be touched directly. And when it was carried, it had to be handled with specific poles, like someone trying to avoid electrical contact. To many modern minds, these details sound less like legend and more like a device, a kind of technology far beyond anything of that time. Some compare it to a weapon, others to a powerful energy source, and some go further, suggesting it was not from this world at all. This idea, of course, causes discomfort in religious circles, because if the Ark was a machine, who built it, and where did it come from? But even those who hold fast to their faith must admit, the power of the Ark was real. People died, nations feared it, kings sought it, and wherever it went, it changed the course of history. Could it be that God used something beyond our understanding, something part divine, part material, to carry his presence? Was it a miracle, or a message, or both? In 2014, during a quiet restoration of an old monastery just miles from the chapel that houses the Ark, a group of local priests discovered something buried under a loose stone in the floor. A manuscript, written in Ge'ez, the ancient liturgical language of Ethiopia. It was wrapped in linen, protected from dust and moisture, and sealed with a faint imprint of a cross burned into wax. The document had no official title, no author, just a date, circa 1500 AD. At first, it seemed to be another collection of prayers or blessings common in the region. But after translation, the content stunned the priests and scholars involved. The manuscript described an object of light and judgment, hidden in a stone chamber guarded by one who has seen the fire with his eyes but lives. It warned of a time when voices from the west would seek the box, and that when they come, the earth would tremble 3 times before the veil is lifted. What alarmed the translators most was a strange reference to a sickness without breath that would cover the nations like a fog, something many now believe could be describing the global pandemic that began in 2020. The manuscript ends with this line: "In the days when the silence breaks, those who did not kneel will fall to their knees." No one could explain how the document remained hidden for centuries in a sacred space, or how it seemed to speak so clearly of modern events. The church decided not to make the manuscript public. Only a few photographs were quietly shared before they were removed from circulation. And once again, the silence returned. But those who read it still whisper, "The Ark is waking." In late 2020, while the world was distracted by a global crisis, something happened in Axum that few people outside Ethiopia even heard about. But for those who were there, it marked the beginning of something they say cannot be undone. Amid the chaos of civil conflict, a group of armed men approached the chapel where the Ark is believed to be kept. Some say they were soldiers, others say they were rebels, acting without orders. What everyone agrees on is this: they entered the grounds, and some may have entered the chapel itself. What happened inside is still a matter of deep secrecy. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church made only one public statement: a great sin has been committed. In the days that followed, dozens of people from the area, including monks, witnesses, and civilians, were found dead. The official story was that they were casualties of war, but local clergy whispered something very different. They said the Ark had been disturbed. They said those who entered fell without being touched, that the light inside the chapel flickered for 3 nights, that the guardian monk, who had held his post in silence for years, was found unconscious, muttering in an unknown tongue. There were even rumors that a foreign agent had been among those who tried to retrieve something from the site, but he was never seen again. To this day, the church refuses to say what happened. The government denies any raid, but satellite images taken weeks later show increased activity around the chapel. Armed patrols, barriers, and a new roof placed over the ancient structure. Something was shaken loose that night, and ever since, those who live in Axum say, the air feels different, heavy, waiting. Not long after the attempted breach in Axum, a team of clergy members entered the sacred grounds to assess the damage. What they found inside the outer wall of the chapel left them speechless. Carved into one of the inner stones, where there had been no marking before, was a phrase in ancient Hebrew. It was deep, precise, and still warm to the touch, as if it had only just been etched. The inscription read, "The time of silence is over. The veil shall be torn." At first they thought it was the work of the intruders, but the carving was not superficial. It cut through solid stone with impossible precision. No modern tool could have done it without leaving signs. There was no debris, no dust, no scratches around it. Just those words, glowing faintly for a moment before returning to cold gray. The priests took no photos. They refused to speak about it publicly. But one of them, shaken and pale, spoke anonymously to a local Christian journalist. He said that as soon as the inscription was read aloud, they heard a low sound, like distant thunder beneath their feet, even though the skies above were clear and still. Later, when scholars were shown a handwritten copy of the phrase, they were stunned. The expression, "the veil shall be torn," appears only once in Scripture, in reference to the moment when Christ died, and the curtain of the temple was split in two, symbolizing that heaven and earth had been opened. But in this context, it felt different. It felt like a warning, not of access being granted, but of a boundary being removed. What if the veil isn't opening upward, to heaven, but downward? What if what lies behind it is no longer waiting? Until recently, the Ark of the Covenant was treated as a distant mystery, a relic from ancient times, wrapped in stories, sealed in silence. But now, with events unfolding across Ethiopia, Jerusalem, and even in sacred texts newly uncovered, it no longer feels like a relic. It feels like a voice, one that's speaking directly to the world today. The warnings found in the Qumran scrolls, the whispered testimonies from Aksum, the inscriptions carved in stone without hands, all of it points to a single truth. Something is changing. The manuscript found near Aksum spoke of a sickness without breath that would cover the nations, a line many now believe described the global pandemic. The stone carving inside the chapel declared the time of silence is over, and the deaths of monks and witnesses after the 2020 breach show that whatever lies inside is not asleep anymore. These signs aren't random. They seem to be calling for attention, discernment, and most of all, repentance. For the Christian who reads the Bible not as history but as truth, these events echo prophecies spoken long ago, warnings of a time when sacred things would return to the surface, when ancient power, once hidden, would rise, not to destroy, but to remind us that we are not in control. The world today is louder than ever, filled with voices that mock faith, challenge truth, and dismiss the sacred. But quietly, from the deserts of Qumran to the hills of Aksum, a message has begun to rise again, not in the form of words shouted from a pulpit, but in silence broken after 2,000 years. And those who have ears to hear are listening. For generations, the Ark of the Covenant was spoken of as something lost, a legend buried in the past, sealed behind the veil of time. But now, with every sign, every uncovered text, every unexplained event around Aksum, a new question rises. What if it was never truly gone? What if it was only hidden until the appointed time? The Ark has always been more than a box. It was built to be the place where God's presence would rest among men, a throne on earth. When it moved, nations trembled. When it stopped, armies fell. It carried both judgment and mercy, death and deliverance. And today, as wars rise again, as sickness sweeps the nations, as old boundaries begin to crack, the silence around the Ark is breaking. We are not only witnessing history, we are walking into prophecy. The signs are not just in stone or parchment. They are in our headlines, in our churches, in our hearts. A sacred object, long buried, is drawing the eyes of the world, and with it comes a warning that cannot be ignored. Prepare your soul, because what was once hidden is no longer asleep, and what once judged nations may soon speak again. For the believer, this is not a time for fear. It is a time for faith. The Ark was never meant to frighten the faithful, but to remind them, God is not distant. He is holy. He is near, and He is calling. So when the veil tears, when the silence ends, when the world sees what lies within the chamber, will we recognize it as a threat or as a final chance for redemption?